Welcome to Relation Tales. Please like this video and subscribe Relation Tales. My wife surprised me during our fancy dinner on our 5th anniversary. She told me she wants to see other people even though we're married. I felt confused and hurt. I think if someone wants that, they should talk about it openly or consider getting divorced. But she didn't agree. She said if I really loved her, I'd let her do it. I couldn't understand how we got to this point. I had planned a special dinner with expensive gifts, hoping to make her happy. But instead, she seemed distant and uncomfortable. She kept looking around nervously and avoided eye contact. Finally, she confessed her desire to have affairs. It was a shock. I didn't know what to do. I put my wine glass down and wondered why she seemed so serious. I thought maybe she wanted to talk about starting a family. We'd discussed it before, but decided to wait until we were more settled in our careers and had more money saved up. Now that we had achieved those goals, I was excited about the idea. But her avoiding eye contact made me worried she might not feel the same. Usually, when someone wants to talk about starting a family, they smile and look directly at you. But this time was different. "I've been thinking a lot," my wife Andrea said, her expression serious. "And it's really important to me. I feel like I need to explore life beyond our relationship." I was completely shocked. I was overwhelmed with a lot of emotions, confusion, bewilderment, and anger, which fell on me at once. I couldn't believe it. "I think if I take the time to understand myself better, I'll end up being a better partner for you." I was at a loss, experiencing a mixture of emotions as I sat and tried to make sense of what she had just said. "I'm sorry, what?" I interrupted her by placing my hands on the table and looking straight into her eyes, the expression of which reflected my complete confusion. She turned away without meeting my gaze and continued talking. "Rob, I want to be in other relationships," Andrea said. "I want to talk to you about it now so there are no surprises later." I felt really disappointed and my heart raced. "What do you mean by other relationships, Andrea?" I asked. Her answer was unclear. "Maybe different types," she said. I felt even more confused and it was hard to breathe. I tried to stay calm as I asked, "What do you mean, Andrea? Are you talking about dating other men? Do you want to be unfaithful and expect me not to mind while you're dating other guys?" My voice rose, and I suddenly noticed that the nearby diners could hear our conversation. "Please be quiet, dear. We don't need everyone eavesdropping on us," Andrea whispered urgently, trying to calm me down. I realized that she was planning to break the news to me in a public place to avoid a scene. She surprised me, which made me feel sick and made knots in my stomach. All I could say was a confused, "Why? Why do you want to date other men, Andrea?" She replied that she needed space to find herself. I couldn't help but ask, "What do you mean, Andrea? Are you saying you want to be close with other men? Are you thinking of ending our relationship?" She assured me she wasn't leaving me, that she loved me deeply and saw a future with me. But she said she needed time to explore parts of herself she hadn't before. She wanted my permission to do this, promising it was only temporary. She said she'd come back to me once she figured things out. This was the last thing I expected to hear. On our 5th anniversary dinner, Andrea shocked me by saying she wanted to be with other men. She expected me to agree without question. I was speechless and couldn't think straight. I got up calmly, finished my wine, put the glass down, and left the restaurant quietly. "I don't know where you're going, but I suggest you take a taxi home," I said. After leaving the restaurant, I found my car, started the engine, put it in gear and drove off without having a clear idea of the goal. My head was splitting from the pain that started from behind and spread throughout my body. The time and place were blurred by a haze, and the next morning when I woke up in the car, I was struggling to make sense of the surroundings. Getting out of the car, I stretched and yawned, trying to make sense of the events of the previous night and desperately hoping that it was just a bad dream. With a full bladder and a strong desire to drink coffee, I knew I needed to collect my thoughts before heading home. Finding a secluded spot in the bushes nearby, I returned to the car, started the engine, and went in search of a much-needed cup of coffee. I quickly made myself breakfast and washed it down with coffee, trying to figure out what to do in this situation. The idea of my wife dating other men was completely unacceptable to me. It would undoubtedly lead to the collapse of our marriage. Even though Andrea told me her feelings, I still wondered if she meant what she said. Maybe she's going through a tough time and escaping reality. I'm not sure because I'm not an expert in mental health. I checked my phone and realized it had been off all night. When I turned it on, I saw lots of missed calls and messages from Andrea, worried about me. I wasn't ready to face her yet, but I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. I ignored her messages and kept moving forward. I sat down with some coffee and a big breakfast, trying to figure out what to do next. When I got home, Andrea asked, "Where were you all night, honey?" "I was so worried about your safety, I thought you might have had an accident and got stuck," she said with a worried expression on her face. She tried to kiss me, but I took a step back and told her I decided to start my day with a refreshing shower before we start a serious conversation. "You mentioned your journey of self-discovery last night, and we need to talk about it." I walked past her and headed upstairs to the bedroom, taking off the suit I'd been wearing all night as I went. Standing under the jets of hot water, I thought about the important things I had to tell her. Not knowing what the outcome would be, I felt a desire to act and find out if our marriage had been preserved or if she was saying goodbye to him. It could be a test of my loyalty to her. I had no idea how she felt. I believed that I adored her. I actually married her. She told me she loved me too. We had a big wedding and an amazing trip to Europe to celebrate our love. I've always been faithful to her, never even thought about being with someone else. But she doesn't seem as committed as I am. Luckily, we don't have kids yet. We'll decide about that later, depending on what happens next. After changing my clothes, I went to the kitchen to make more coffee. I grabbed a notebook and pen. Andrea was already there, watching me closely. Despite the fact that I tried to keep my outward calm, I felt depressed inside. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down. "Could you explain to me again, Andrea, why you want to have a relationship outside of our marriage?" "My love, I want to establish myself as a woman. It seems to me that my needs are not being met right now. I need the opportunity to explore and find that satisfaction on my own." "So you're suggesting we take a break from our relationship to figure out what you want?" "No, my love, I'm not suggesting we leave. I intend to stay close to you in our house, but it's important for me to be independent of time and choice. Andrea, when are you going to start this journey and create your new daily routine? I'm open to talk whenever you're ready." "But Andrea, I can't agree with what you're saying. When we got married, we promised to be together forever, loving and supporting each other. Thinking about being with someone else breaks those promises. I still have hope for us. I'm not ready to give up on our marriage. I feel like we've drifted apart, but I want to fix that. We're both so busy with work that we don't spend enough time together. I miss feeling loved and valued like we did when we first got together. I know I'm focused on providing for our future family, but I want us to remember the love that brought us together in the beginning. Let's try to make our relationship a priority and find joy in each other again. Let's work together to achieve the dream we talked about when we got married, like paying off the debt for this house." My anger was building, but I knew I had to stay calm. "Are you thinking about cheating with other men?" This question scared me. I should have answered it earlier than all the others. "Honey, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. If the opportunity presents itself, I might think about it. So you're thinking about betraying me?" "Rob, it's not about hurting you. It's not cheating if you're aware of what's happening." I felt really stressed at that moment, so I took a deep breath to calm down. I sipped my coffee, wishing it was something stronger to help me relax. I knew I had to stay focused and keep going. "So, let me get this straight. Andrea, are you thinking of going out with other guys, maybe even sleeping with them? And you'll still be here at home?" "Well, it's not as easy as that, honey. I'm not sure. Andrea, in my opinion, everything is quite simple. Are you suggesting that we do everything together during this period? Don't forget, you're still married. Are we just going to take a break from our marriage for a while? Are you suggesting that we maintain an intimate relationship during this period?" "Of course, Rob, we are a family. You and I cherish you deeply and I want us to remain a family. I just think I need to do this from time to time to gain clarity." "How often are you going to do this, Andrea?" "Every weekend, multiple times a week, every night." "How much are you planning to explore?" "I'm not sure yet. My love, why are you so concerned about how often we'll see each other? I need to figure out what I'm going to do while you're out with other men. I don't have someone like that in my life." I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. I was on the verge of losing my temper, but I needed to focus on not letting things escalate. "There are some things we need to talk about before we make any decisions. Are you sure this is what you want? Have you thought about how this will affect our marriage?" I asked Andrea. She nodded, but didn't give a direct answer. It was clear that she wasn't thinking about my feelings and wasn't taking my point of view into account. Then she said, "If you love me, you'll let me do it." I replied, "Andrea, if you really love me, you won't do it. I have set a clear boundary. Honey, I've made a decision. I can't change my mind. This ultimatum will determine our future." Our relationship will never be the same again. Andrea didn't fully understand what would happen if she pursued relationships outside of our marriage, and this changed everything. It's time for me to act. These are my rules, and they won't change. I told her what she needed to do if she wanted to see other people. It was clear she'd have to find somewhere else to live during this time. I made it clear I couldn't live with her while she dated other men, and I didn't want them coming to our home. She asked where she could go, so I suggested staying with her friend Jessica, who's divorced and lives alone. I suggested she ask Jessica if she could stay with her for a while. If this is not possible, you can rent a temporary apartment, but you will have to pay for utilities and a car. Andrea, who taught in the 3rd grade at a local elementary school, had a steady income. On the other hand, I worked as a forensic auditor for a well-known company, receiving a generous salary and annual bonuses. I admitted that I might not be able to fully meet all your needs in our relationship. I confessed. Andrea looked at me directly for the first time, feeling triumphant in our ongoing battle. If you're offering an open marriage, then I have to be prepared for you to look for another relationship. Will you come back to me, Andrea, after all is said and done? My love, I understand everything. You are very dear to me. You're my partner. I want us to have a family together. But if you're dating other men, what do you expect from me? Do you expect me to be faithful to you? Should I just stay home, wait for you to finish with them, and then welcome you back? Have you thought about how I'd feel about all this? I want you to be my partner, only mine, Andrea. Whatever happens when we're apart won't matter when we're together again. I imagine us having a future where you're my partner and the father of our kids. It feels weird to think otherwise. It seems Andrea is okay with my decision not to let other men come to our house for intimacy. Maybe she sees it as a win. Now she can talk to other guys without me getting involved. Fine, but we need to talk about some things. Can you move your stuff to the spare room? I'm not sure I'm ready to share a bed with you right now. Your actions are really hurting me. It seems like you're trying to push me away without saying it directly. Can you explain what's going on? Andrea didn't react much, so I realized she was starting to figure out I wasn't just going to accept things the way they were. Maybe she was surprised I wanted to sleep separately. But what did she expect? Did she think I'd forget and let her cheat on me, then act like everything's normal? No way. Andrea got close to another teacher, Jessica. I felt like Jessica influenced some of Andrea's choices. Jessica, a divorced teacher, got asked to leave the same school where Andrea worked because her husband found out about her affairs. At 35, Jessica was attractive, but she had a habit of getting into relationships with any guy who paid attention to her. I suspected that Jessica's behavior might have influenced Andrea's decision to open up before settling down and starting a family. For me, the harsh truth was that if Andrea continued to move in this direction of self-discovery, our family might not survive. The most likely outcome would be a divorce. I got up from the table and started to leave. Andrea asked, "Is this the end, Rob? Are you telling me to leave?" I replied, "Yes, that's what we're on right now." Andrea, please don't get me wrong. I refuse to accept it. When we exchanged vows, we promised to be faithful to each other. Now you're thinking about breaking that promise. What should I do? Do I have to sit back and watch you with other guys? If you want an open marriage, then I think I have the right to do the same. Andrea was silent, shocked, and I left before things got worse. I grabbed the car keys and left the house. "Where are you going, honey?" my wife asked. "I'm not sure yet, but please start packing and find somewhere else to stay. Just remember, you can't betray our marriage until you move out." In response, I slammed the door behind me with more force than usual. I was prepared for the fact that if necessary, I would have to leave on my own. Since it was my wife who caused this chaotic situation, I believed that she should be the one to deal with the inconvenience. Besides, I guessed that Jessica, a woman known for her promiscuity, was manipulating Andrea, so she should be responsible for the consequences. Despite the strong desire to meet Jessica at her house, I forced myself to restrain myself. Early Monday morning, I left for work before Andrea woke up. Given that Andrea's intentions were hanging over my head, I realized that I had a significant amount of work to do to strengthen my plan. I was determined not to put up with her infidelity. If she decided to end our marriage, then I had to take steps to fix the situation. The thought of her betraying me was incredibly painful. I couldn't just ignore her involvement in affairs and act like everything was okay when she came home. I worried about what might happen, like getting sick or pregnant because of what she was doing. I knew we had to get a divorce, so I talked to my lawyer, who's also a good friend. Usually, he helps with things like buying houses or making wills for us. I didn't expect him to handle the divorce, but I trusted his advice on finding a good lawyer. He connected me with someone from his firm, and I met them the same day. The meeting was tough, but my new lawyer was really good at their job and knew a lot about our state's laws. I didn't want our divorce to be a big fight. I was okay with splitting everything 50-50. When we got married, we didn't have much, and we both worked hard to build a happy life together. It suited me that everything was divided equally. After all, I have a heart. I prepared the necessary papers and kept them until I had concrete evidence that my wife had actually dated other men. Until then, it was only a preliminary measure on my part. The week seemed to fly by at a snail's pace. I tried to spend as little time at home as possible, preferring to leave the house every evening, usually to the gym to relieve stress. I noticed that Andrea was with Jessica a lot, and on Thursday she told me that she would stay with her for a few weeks until she found a more suitable place. I realized that the place I had set aside for her would give her the opportunity to spend time with her boyfriends without my interference. Most likely Jessica will accept her partners as well, which will create a good company. The situation was a disaster. Just a week after our 5th anniversary, my wife said she wanted to have affairs. She packed her things to leave, but then she hesitated. "Honey, I don't want to go. Can't we fix this so I can stay? I love you so much, and I want our marriage to be better," she said, looking at me with pleading eyes. I replied, "Andrea, if you truly loved me and wanted our marriage to improve, you wouldn't be leaving. I want you to stay, but I can't accept you being with other men while still being my wife. I love you, but I can't put up with this kind of behavior. Let's go to a marriage counseling session together to solve our problems. If you don't want to, I don't know what else to say. Just go away." While she was packing her things in the car, I went to the hardware store to buy new locks for the house. I changed 3 locks. Over the weekend, I updated the security code for the garage door opener, hoping to increase the security of our home. I spent the night from Saturday to Sunday at home, looking at the walls and wishing Andrea would come to her senses and come back. The week that followed was incredibly difficult. I went to the gym every day and started running again to cope with stress. Sometimes I felt really desperate, wishing my wife would come back. It was hard for me to understand how she could have affairs while still being married to me. I struggled with feeling like I wasn't good enough, wondering if it was something about me that made her cheat. So I looked into why people cheat. I was surprised to find out that about 40% of married people have affairs. What's even more surprising is that almost 90% of them choose to stay married. Sometimes, the spouse who's been cheated on decides to ignore it, especially if they have kids and don't notice the affair. Many women who cheat say they still love their husband and family, but they feel like something's missing at home. Running a household and taking care of kids takes up so much time that there's not much left for the relationship with their spouse. They want to feel special and loved by someone who's focused on them, not just talk about chores or kids after being intimate. Maybe the key to a good marriage is treating your spouse like you would a lover, instead of getting divorced and focusing only on the physical side. Should I surprise my wife at the club where she's going with Jessica? People cheat for different reasons. Sometimes it's because they're unhappy or feel distant from their partner, or they want to get back at them for cheating. Some women say they cheat to try to save their marriage. I'm not sure about that, but researchers studying adultery have found it to be true. Marriage is a complex institution that requires constant dedication to maintain the bond between partners. A partnership in which both parties agree to extramarital affairs rarely lasts long. Emotional attachments are formed, which eventually lead to a feeling of betrayal. Polyamorous relationships, which often lead to divorce, can be no less difficult and stressful, especially if they involve children. The additional risk of contracting sexually transmitted diseases only further complicates the situation. In my opinion, monogamy is the best option for a successful marriage. If both spouses do not share this belief, they may be incompatible as spouses and should consider finding partners who match their values. It is important to think about whether your neglect of your partner has put you off. I wonder if I didn't give her the attention she deserved by focusing on what I thought was necessary to create a better life for us. Was I wrong about my priorities? I can't say for sure. I only know that I felt unhappy when my wife decided to leave our house and be with other men, looking for something that, in her opinion, I could not offer. I didn't think her choice would benefit our relationship. Another sad week has passed. I resisted the urge to contact my wife and received only one message from Andrea, asking me to forward her mail. Her messages were cold and contained no signs of wanting to rebuild our marriage. It was clear that she was moving on and looking for a new relationship, perhaps even with several partners, for the sake of pleasure. Intrigued by her new dates, I thought about following her and seeing where she and Jessica went. I drove past the apartment several times, but I fought the temptation to stop. I knew I couldn't stand constant surveillance. I needed to let her decide on her own. If I didn't, she might never come back. Every day, the chance of us fixing things got smaller. But the longer she stayed away, the less I wanted her back. After a month of not hearing from her, Andrea showed up at the house unexpectedly. She couldn't open the door with her key, so she had to ring the bell and knock. When I opened the door, I asked her, "What brings you here today, Andrea?" She looked surprised and said, "My key isn't working anymore." "What's going on?" I kept a serious face and told her, "I changed all the locks." When she tried to come in, I blocked her and asked, "What do you need, Andrea?" I came back to pick up a few things that I forgot when I moved in with Jess. Once again, her visit was solely to pick up her things, not to try to establish a relationship with me. She didn't seem to care about my emotions and the resentment I might feel. It was obvious that I was just a hindrance in her plans. Did she really think that I wouldn't be affected by her affair with other men and that I would eventually take her back? "I've collected several boxes of your stuff from various places around the house, and now they're stored in the garage, so there's no need for that." I welcomed her into the house, knowing that it was still her home. We went to the garage where she saw all her boxes of things waiting for her. "How long will you stay with Jessica?" I asked. "She's been so helpful. I'll be with her for a while," Andrea said. "I'm sure in a few months I'll come back to you and be an even better wife. Then we can start a family." I couldn't help but laugh at this. The idea that being with other men would make her a better wife or mom seemed silly to me. It seemed like her thoughts, probably from Jessica's influence, were confused. Deep down, she must have known it didn't make sense. I had my own thoughts about it. "Have you met someone special yet?" My question made Andrea blush, which indicated that the answer was already clear to me. Jess and I went on a few dates with guys from our club, but those were all our romantic encounters. "How do you like being around your new boyfriends?" I asked, watching Andrea blush as she rummaged through the boxes of things. Already knowing the answer, I decided to leave the garage and return to the kitchen to drink coffee and get a newspaper. A few minutes later, Andrea came out with a bag of her things and looked around the kitchen. She expected to return to the dirty house, but to her surprise, it was spotlessly clean. I hired a cleaning service that came 3 times a week, so there were no dishes, no beer bottles, no piles of laundry in the house. Despite the pristine condition of the house, she looked disappointed, trying to come to terms with the fact that my wife left me for another man. I couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by the contrast between the well-kept house and the dirty and my own emotional shock. "Do you need anything else, Andrea?" I could feel her curiosity about what was going on while she was gone. "So, darling, how have things been since I started living with Jess?" "I'm fine. My job doesn't bother me, and I travel a lot." "Don't you go anywhere at all, or are you just sitting at home alone?" I've been waiting for this question. As they say, what's good for one is good for the other. It's time to gently expand the boundaries of her capabilities. Lately, I've been staying active by joining a cycling group that meets twice a week for organized rides. We start from a certain spot and ride together, covering a good distance. It's been really rewarding. I get to meet new people and chat over beer and a burger after the ride. Cycling makes me hungry, and the pressure from Andrea has actually helped me lose some weight in the past few weeks. Exercise has been my way of avoiding a breakdown. I've tried not to drink too much because it wouldn't help. "That's nice," Andrea said, sounding more curious about my activities than what she actually said. As she drove off, she started to realize that her plan wasn't going as she'd hoped. Perhaps her faithful husband has found someone new and doesn't want to be with her anymore. Perhaps her desire to find a guy who would fill the void in her marriage led to unforeseen and serious consequences. It was later revealed that Andrea had dated 2 men from the club she attended with Jessica and had repeatedly engaged in intimate relationships with both. They lost interest in her. After the meeting, they couldn't wait to leave Jessica's apartment. Both men were in a serious relationship and were looking for only temporary satisfaction, which Andrea did. After a couple of months, it became clear to me that my marriage was over and it was time to move on to the next phase of my plan. Andrea didn't get in touch with me for several weeks, which indicated that she wasn't thinking about me and our marriage. She seemed more focused on her own desires and needs than on returning home. Even if she decided to come back, It would most likely involve a lot of conditions, and I wasn't sure I could take her back under such circumstances. I got really worried when I found out Andrea went to the Dominican Republic with one of her boyfriends during the school break. They had a good time, soaking up the sun and doing different things. Jessica's lies about me being a bad husband and my not caring attitude towards Andrea played a big part in her deciding to end our marriage. Now she's living with her unhappy friend who's divorced in a small apartment. Her reputation with friends and family is taking a hit. When Andrea's mom found out she went to the Caribbean with another man, she wasn't happy. Andrea's note about finding other partners in bed made her mom wonder. I told her to talk to Andrea herself to find out what's really going on. Andrea's mom asked her straight out, "Why did you leave home? What's up with Robert? Is he treating you badly?" Andrea reassured her mother by saying, "No, Mom, he doesn't treat me badly, but I don't feel horny or desirable with him, and I really want to feel wanted. I don't feel attracted to him, so I'm looking for him elsewhere. Before starting a family with Rob, I want to have some fun. I need it now, but I'll come back to him when he appreciates me more. Everything will work out. You'll see," Andrea confidently declared to her shocked mother. "If you have affairs with other men, Robert won't want you as his wife. Cheating will ruin your marriage. Don't you understand that?" Her mother warned her worriedly. "I'm sure Rob loves me, Mum. He knows why I need it," Andrea assured. "I'll be back home in a few months, maybe a year at most, and then we can start a family. Andrea, it's time for you to wake up and go home. Otherwise there may be no marriage, no husband to return to, and he won't have any children. Do you understand?" "Mom, I know Rob loves me and I'm confident in my choice." Even her mother couldn't change her mind. Therefore, following the principle of equality, what is good for one should be good for the other. After Andrea left 3 months ago, I decided to check if I was ready to start over. I needed to change something about the monotonous routine of work, gym, cycling, and sleeping that has consumed my days since my wife left. In search of female companionship, I plucked up the courage and asked out one of the women I rode a bike with. "It's time to move on and start a new part of your life." I was waiting for this tough time to be over. It felt like that's all I could do. Part of me still hoped Andrea would realize what she's doing, stop it, and come back home. But it seemed like wishful thinking. I had to accept the truth. It didn't seem likely she'd come back, at least not the same as my wife or the woman I knew before. She seemed to like being independent now. She wanted excitement and assurance, things that were missing in our marriage. Psychologists say that's why women sometimes cheat on their husbands. I wanted to make an appointment so I didn't seem too impatient or only focused on finding someone new. I understood that it might be awkward if I did not establish mutual understanding first in my cycling group and then vice versa. Before asking one of the women out on a date, I didn't want it to look like a love date because our cycling group was so close-knit. Many of my friends knew about my recent separation from my wife and perhaps even knew about Andrea's active dating life. In a small town like ours, news travels fast and gossip is inevitable. So when I asked Diana to join me for a drink and a meal, I was pleasantly surprised when she agreed. I wanted everything to be calm and relaxed without too much hype. I suggested kayaking on the lake. Before dinner, I convinced Diana to try kayaking, despite her lack of experience, based on her own experience in this business. Intrigued, she agreed, and our plans quickly turned into a fun walk. After the adventure on the water, we enjoyed delicious food and drinks. As a result, Diana had a great time kayaking with me for about 3 hours. We went to a charming restaurant to enjoy a delicious dinner and drinks. I chose steak with fried potatoes combined with delicious local beer, and Diana tried a pasta dish accompanied by white wine. The atmosphere was relaxed and free from any pressure. After the meal, we tasted ice cream. I drove Diana home, expressing my gratitude to her for a wonderful day. When I bent down to kiss her on the cheek, she surprised me by clinging to my lips. The kiss was charming and took me by surprise. I didn't want to seem too eager, so I waited until our usual bike ride on Tuesday to bring up another ride. Diana surprised me by saying she thinks I don't enjoy myself because I don't reach out enough. I told her I do enjoy spending time with her. We agreed to meet up on Saturday for a game of golf. I've learned it's important to find the right balance when talking to someone you like. If you bombard them with messages and calls, it can push them away. So I messaged Diana on Friday to say how excited I was for our golf game on Saturday. I suggested a time to pick her up, but also said she could meet me at the golf club if that was easier for her. After she asked me to pick her up, we made an appointment for an early evening. The time spent on the golf course was enjoyable, even though we both knew we would never become professionals. In the evening, for dinner, we cooked a barbecue and drank a bottle of wine at my house. When it was time to walk her home, she surprised me by leaving her car keys on the kitchen counter and asking me to go into the bedroom. When I woke up the next morning, I found an amazing woman lying next to me. When her hand casually rested on my body, I couldn't help but admire Diana's striking facial features. Her long dark hair cascaded down her back, complementing her captivating green eyes and flawless skin. The faint scar on her chin, left over from a childhood accident, seemed to only accentuate the beauty of her face. With her tall stature and slender figure, she weighed little, and was distinguished by exceptional physical fitness. Diana worked as a nurse in the children's section of a nearby hospital and always showed real kindness in everything she did. There was something about her that drew me in right from the start. We had breakfast together on my patio, but soon the conversation turned to me and my plans, especially about my divorce. It was a sensitive topic, and I could tell where it was heading. Diana wanted to know my intentions before getting too involved emotionally, which was fair. No woman wants to spend time with someone who might go back to their ex later on. When I explained how Andrea left and how strangely she acted, Diana's expression told me she probably wasn't coming back. Seeing how deep my wife's involvement with other men was, I felt ready for the next step of my plan. So, on Monday morning, I called my lawyer and asked him to get his investigator involved. My goal was to find out all the details of my wife's relationship with other men before the divorce process began. It turned out that she dated several men, many of whom were married, and they often gathered at Jessica's apartment after night out in bars and clubs. After receiving the divorce papers, Andrea appeared on my doorstep in the evening, clutching a large brown envelope. There was concern on her face. "Why are you here, Andrea?" I asked. "Someone gave me these papers today," she explained. "Why did you file for divorce?" "I promised I'd be back soon. We could start planning for the child we were talking about." I asked her to join me in the kitchen, but reminded her that it was too late for that. "I specifically asked you not to leave, but you decided to do it anyway," I said. She objected, saying that she needed to find herself and feel confident. I couldn't help but laugh. "Do you feel confident now? Have you taken the time to analyze your attractiveness and relationships? Have you met new people and had meaningful experiences?" I started to open up and express my feelings. "Everything seems to have changed. I haven't heard from you since you left. You didn't even contact me on my birthday, maybe because you were busy with one of your other partners in the Dominican Republic. Your own mom even called and asked why you didn't call her on Mother's Day. My goodness, have you been with someone else all this time? I love you a lot, and I understand I might have pushed you away. I'm going home today. I'm sorry, but you can't come back. I'm still your spouse, but by the court's decision. You can't be near this house until the divorce is finished. I won't inform on you, but you have to leave. Andrea, we will decide everything in court." Andrea began to understand the seriousness of our marriage vows. To love, honor, cherish, be faithful, and commit ourselves not to get involved with others. "This house is not particularly valuable to me, Andrea. It's yours if you want it. My share is worth about $150,000 as it is almost paid. Alternatively, we can sell the house and split the profits. Everything is simple and clear." She found a new place to live and started her life with a clean slate. Even though the breakup hurt, we both knew it was for the best. I focused on moving forward, leaving the past behind and looking ahead. At the charter school where she worked, she was told to be more careful with how she communicated. It turned out some parents were worried because she was dating multiple people from our community and they didn't want her to influence the students. Most of the complaints came from moms who didn't like the idea of a woman teaching their kids. Some people thought maybe some dads had romantic relationships with her. She got diagnosed with a non-life-threatening sexually transmitted disease. She had to stop having sex for a year, which wasn't a big deal because she was already pregnant. Later, we found out one of her partners was the reason she got sick. She hadn't been taking birth control and had been drinking a lot. We don't know who the child's father is. My divorce from Andrea is finally done, and I'm free from her. It's been almost a year since things got tough with Andrea. During this time, I bought a new house, got a promotion at work, and most importantly, Diana and I moved in together. We have 2 exciting news to share. We're getting married this summer, and we're expecting our first baby by Christmas. Andrea keeps calling me and finding me in bars, but I always tell her I'm happy with someone else. 3 years later, Andrea got married, but it didn't go well. Her husband is a questionable person. Andrea's mom says Andrea often has bruises on her face, but stays with him and raises her daughter from another man. Thanks for watching. Please like this video and subscribe Relation Tales.